What is going on, everyone? Welcome to 24/7 Football, and an interesting development within the footballing scene during COVID-19 is that the first football club to fold in the UK was Rhyl FC. They announced that yesterday. They're going through the winding up order, and we've actually got Cameron with us just to talk through Rhyl FC, as he's from Rhyl himself, regularly goes to the games, and tried to save them as well. So we'll be talking through that. But Cameron, commiserations, but thank you for coming onto the platform for us.
Oh, thanks for having me, mate. Thank you.
So obviously hard times at the moment for everyone from Rhyl, I imagine. Never nice to see a football club go as well. But what before we go into exactly what's been going on, what does Rhyl FC mean to you, the fans, and the community as well?
It means everything. I know Rhyl is, it is a town. It's not a big city, and the football club is a huge part of the community. Really, I know certainly for myself growing up, I was born in '96, and we didn't have social media and all that. And growing up, you get the paper would come in, and you check the scores, and you go to the back page, and you'd have all the Welsh Premier League, and back then we spent a bit of time in the second division as well. So you'd get the scores in the Rhyl Journal, and it meant an awful lot. Especially at school, all those younger ones all playing football. You've played with me. I'm not much of a player myself, but I played for my local grassroots team, Rhyl Glands, but there were kids that I went to school with, mates of mine that played in the Rhyl Academy, and that was kind of their sort of football journey really, and none of them have gone on to make it, but it was a big part of their childhood. And there's girls that I went to school with who actually, after I finished school, went on and played for the Rhyl women's team, and were still involved with the club, as far as I know, up until last year. So a massive part of growing up, and for the people in the community, it's huge. So it's heartbreaking, really.
In terms of Welsh football as well, because many people may not be familiar with it, how big of a club was Rhyl?
Massive. I mean, Rhyl, and specifically the ground, Bellevue, is a hub for Welsh football in North Wales. This is a football club with 141 years of history. And that's not just a local sort of club working sort of grassroots football that's been going for a long time. This is a football club that played in the FA Cup all the way back during the sort of 50s, 60s, 70s. We got to the fourth round of the FA Cup on one occasion. So massive, and I think the biggest game in football in North Wales is sort of either Rhyl Prestatyn or Rhyl Bangor. It's all two massive rivalries, and we've seen those games this season with the three clubs all being in the second division together. So Rhyl is a massive football club, and whenever I say Bellevue specifically, the grounds, a lot of the clubs playing in the Welsh League system will qualify for the Champions League and for the Europa League, obviously getting into the preliminary rounds and sometimes the qualifiers. And whenever clubs in the north of Wales, teams like Connors Quay, who don't have the grounds themselves, the facilities to play European fixtures, those games always take place at Bellevue. So not just Rhyl, but we see a lot of European games take place in the town as well. So a massive part of Welsh football.
And it's such a shame to see that history potentially being wiped out. You say that big teams from Wales, they'll always play at Bellevue. Just before we go into the football club, the stadium side, what do you have any inkling about what's going to happen with the stadium now there's potentially no football being played there?
Well, that's the thing, and it's I think there are two, and obviously I don't want to skip ahead here, but there are two primary factors behind why what has happened, and the first one is the obvious one. Everything that's happened with the pandemic and the lockdown that we're all in, and I think that's obvious that that's affecting not just Rhyl, that's affecting football clubs, businesses, that's affecting everybody. But the grounds or the stadium, that is another factor, and that's something that not a lot of people know about, but it's something that's been documented for a long time, and it's very likely. There's been talk of with Rhyl going under. There's been talk of a Phoenix club. Maybe the fans being able to set up a new club, but the likelihood is, and I don't know, it's speculation really. I don't know myself for certain, but it's very likely that Rhyl will never play at Bellevue again for reasons that I'm sure we can go into in more detail if you'd like.
Absolutely. So you've talked about the two climates. The one is COVID-19. We all know about it. It's affecting everybody. So were you surprised to see Rhyl in financial trouble given the current situation, or is this something that's been, anticipated?
No, Rhyl has had trouble for a long time in terms of you're running with. There's been occasions where, I mean, if you go back to 2009, 2010, the club dropped out of what was then the Welsh Premier League because they couldn't get the necessary license to compete in the league, and that was all down to the financing. The club has struggled massively, and again, it all comes back to the situation with the ground. The running costs of the club are significantly higher than most other clubs, playing in the league that the Rhyl are. And the income obviously now is zero. The income drops because there is no football being played. There's no opportunity to raise money for the club, but those running costs are still there. So it's always been an uphill battle. The club year on year has always just about broken even. It's all the effort that goes into raising money to keeping the club going. There's no time to, you can't take time off from that, and that's been forced upon us, and that's the reason why the club was one of the first to go, because as soon as the income stopped, that was it. There was no way for the club to continue, and with us not knowing when football is going to come back, when there is going to be an opportunity for us to raise funds again, there was no chance of things continuing. So the moment this happens and football stopped, I think we all had a very good idea of what was going to happen, and that's why the fundraising and trying to get to raise money for the club, that actually started a while ago. That started sort of back end of December, early January, when we knew that this could possibly happen. And unfortunately, despite everyone's best efforts, the efforts of everybody, the supporters, the Rhyl Fans Association have been incredible. Despite all our efforts, it's not been enough.
We'll talk about the effort to raise money in just a moment. On to the other factor, which is the stadium. Mm-hmm. Do you think there was a reluctance from the tenants, the owners of the stadium, to allow Rhyl to continue? I mean, we're in the situation that we're in, but obviously they still wanted payments even when there's no money coming in at the club. And how do you summarise the owners of the stadium and the part that they've played in this situation unfolding? Well,
they are the major factor really behind the situation that Rhyl are in. For people watching that maybe don't know and don't understand what the situation is, Rhyl Football Club does not own Bellevue and hasn't done for a long time. The stadium is owned by a third party, by a businessman, and it's been owned by him for a long time now. And I don't think the relationship has ever been great. Again, this is my own personal opinion. This is speculation. The impression that I get is that he doesn't care, and actually it's maybe a little convenient for him that what's happening. I don't mean the coronavirus and everything, but the fact that Rhyl are in the position they are struggling is probably quite convenient, because it means that he doesn't have to worry about the club and the lease, and he can actually go on and now and do whatever it is that he wants with the ground. I mean, the football club have reached out to him on a number of occasions to try and to either purchase the grounds off him at market value. Once we got into the position that we were, where there was no income coming into the football club, the chairman of the club reached out and tried to, or made a proposal that we stretch out the lease for an extended period. At the moment, the lease has got 4 years left. To stretch out that lease so that it would still be worth the same amount to the landlord, and it would help with the keeping the club afloat. And there's been numerous different proposals, and it's not been as simple as the landlord coming back and saying no. The fact is, he's not said anything. All of those proposals, those requests, the attempts at creating some sort of dialogue have all fallen on deaf ears. There's been no response whatsoever. So he sort of just waited for Rhyl to die, essentially. Pretty much. That's in. And again, I don't know the internal workings of it. I can only work off the press releases from the club. But the chairman has been on. He was on TalkSport It came out this morning. He was on TalkSport speaking to them about it, and it seems to be that he's just sort of hands over his ears and has just waited for it all to sort of come to an end. It's one, I can't sit here and say, it's disgraceful that he's not trying to help out the football club. Clearly, the football club doesn't interest him. He doesn't own the ground because he's a supporter of the club or anything like that. He's a businessman. He sees this as, he gets an income from the club paying to use the ground, and he has acted like a businessman, but there's been no dialogue whatsoever. And you're making a lot of effort to try and save the club, and when you're not getting anything back and there's no opportunity to even sort of come to some sort of compromise, it obviously does hurt a lot.
In terms of, you'll be able to shed more light on this than me, obviously being a Welsh football fan from Wales and knowing a bit more of the ins and outs. Was there a bit of disappointment from your point of view, the fans' point of view, the club's point of view, that maybe the authorities such as the Welsh FA or the English FA and the league didn't help as much as maybe they could have? They could have prevented this.
It's a difficult one because the press release that came out from the club yesterday, it spoke about how they'd reached out and they'd spoken with the Welsh FA, and that the Welsh FA had been brilliant and very understanding. But the sad reality is we're not in isolation here in terms of we're the only ones being affected by this. We're the first to go, which, like I said, is very upsetting. But I assure you, we will not be the last. There will be a lot of clubs after us that are going to, unfortunately, follow us in terms of facing the same fate. A lot of clubs are going to under, not just football clubs, but businesses as well. So a lot of people are going to struggle. And I think if the FAW, and that's the Welsh Football Association, were to sort of, do something in terms of, I don't know what it would be, a grant or a loan or something to try and help the football club, to help Rhyl, they'd have to do it for everybody. And that's obviously not sustainable. There's not enough money in the Welsh game. The Football Association of Wales doesn't have the finances to do that, and I don't think either does the Welsh government, not to help everybody. So if you can't help everybody, you can't help individuals, unfortunately. So I think it falls on the football club really to try and save itself. Absolutely.
And do you fear for Welsh football as a whole, given the current climate? I know there's a lot of fear for football in general, but you see Premier League, Championship clubs, the league system, they've got a lot of money. Do you fear for Welsh football?
Absolutely. I think when you've got a club like Rhyl, and I know people might look at it, on the face of it, Rhyl are playing in the second division in the Cymru North, and you might think, well, that's, it's not such a big club, but Rhyl is a massive football club, and I've seen other football clubs of similar size to Rhyl who look as though they're going to be facing the same sort of issues. And if we start to see clubs like Rhyl, like Bangor have had their issues in the past, Prestatyn, if we start looking at Welsh Premier League clubs or Cymru Premier clubs, the likes of Connors Quay, if these sort of clubs, start to struggle and can't make the sort of investments that they have, it could be huge. It could have a huge impact on Welsh football, because we know Welsh football isn't the biggest in terms of the size of the league, but it has been growing. It's not an old league. Football in England, and I know the Premier League's maybe not that old, but the top clubs have been playing in the English league system for well over 100 years. The old First Division, the Welsh League, it was called the League of Wales when it started. It only started in the early 90s. I want to say 92, I think, off the top of my head. So it's not an old competition. It's pretty new, really. And it has been growing year on year on year and has come a long way since when it started. But this could be, hugely detrimental, and it could really put a halt to the progress that the league has made, and it'd be a massive shame.
You tried to raise the money. You were speaking to me last week that you were having these fundraising efforts. How much did you manage to raise in the end?
So the Rhyl Fans Association created a Just Giving page, and if you go onto the Rhyl FC Twitter account, or the Rhyl Fans Association Twitter account. It's still on there.
We'll put the link in the description.
Yeah, fantastic, absolutely fantastic. And there was a goal to raise 20,000, and that would basically be to help keep the club afloat. We've not been able to get to that number. I mean, it was desperate, really. That was never a realistic target, but it wasn't a case of us needing to raise a little bit. That's what we needed at a minimum to survive, and actually we needed more than that. But that's the target that was set only a couple of weeks ago, and we're on our way to £4,000 at the moment. I think I checked earlier today, and we were around 3,600. Obviously, it's not been enough to keep the club afloat, but the talk now from the Rhyl Fans Association is that money could potentially be used to help launch a Phoenix club. So there will be more fundraising, and we will be trying to.
So that page will still be live.
I believe so. I don't run it. I've tried to raise awareness. I've tried to raise some money. I've donated myself. I've spoken with people from the Rhyl Fans Association. Hopefully, I expect it will continue. So long as there is still interest in it and people do continue to donate. But yeah, I fully expect that page will continue, and hopefully can play a big part in helping to relaunch or launch a Phoenix club of some sort.
Absolutely, with Rhyl being such a big community club, youth teams, a women's team as well. We hope that the page will stay up, and all the links will be in the description below. We'll donate. Hopefully, others who watch this follow suit as well, because it's like you say, it's such a massive club for the community, and no community should lose a football team. So, just finally, then, if the club does come back in a Phoenix type of way, which is what we're seeing a lot of recently. How do you expect it to unfold? What level will they enter Welsh football? Where will they play the football? I know as a fan, you can't really answer these questions, but if you have any inkling towards it, what would you like to see from the Phoenix club?
Well, I think the best example is a team very similar to Rhyl is Bangor City, and Bangor City is still going as a football club, but only last year the supporters of the football club actually they were quite unhappy with the way the club was being run, and they actually created their own football club. Struggled with it. Bangor 1894, I believe the name is. You might have to double check that, but they've started their own football club. So I imagine we would follow along the same sort of lines of them. Obviously joining much further down the Welsh pyramid. But I think all you have to do is go onto the Rhyl Football Club Twitter page and just look at the reaction, the number of people that have got in touch, shared memories that they have of the football club. There's a huge interest there, and this, the community will come together, and there has to be a football club in Rhyl, and there will be. Be it we have to wait for all of. For us to get out of this pandemic and for it to be reasonable to start talking about football seriously again. But when it happens, there will be a football club, and hopefully it can be one that, it as has always been, it is fan-centric, it is run by the community. The one thing we need to make sure, or the one thing that we need to avoid, and it's the thing that's sort of held the club back and has forced the club to be in the position that it is we can't allow our football club to be at the mercy of a landlord or a business person. Yeah. Unfortunately, I don't think personally that we're ever going to see Rhyl Football Club at Bellevue again. I hope I'm wrong. I do hope I'm wrong. But unless I wouldn't like to see us, enter into a new lease, because I do think we'd end up in the exact same position. So unless we can find a way to raise the funds to purchase the grounds, if the landlord was open to that, it seems to me that it would have to be well above market value. But if there was an opportunity to do that, I'd love to see that happen. But if not, we have to find other facilities to start the club. But I guarantee, there will be a football club in Rhyl again in the not too distant future. And hopefully it's one of those where sort of maybe in 10 years time, we'll be able to look back across those 10 years quite fondly at having rebuilt the football club.
How have rival fans took it. You say you have a big rivalry with Prestatyn, Bangor. I mean, for me as a Man City fan, if Manchester United were to go bust, it would be. You'd think, oh, brilliant, but I wouldn't want that because then you lose that rivalry. And is that the reaction you've sort of seen from your rivals as well?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, they're worlds apart. And the thing is, Rhyl is very much, a community club. And I know the big clubs, your Manchester Cities, your Liverpools, your Manchester Uniteds, they are a huge part of their own communities. But
It's not the same though, is it?
it's not the same. I think there is an appreciation amongst all clubs like Rhyl, like Prestatyn. There are those rivalries, but there's a lot of love. And again, anybody watching that is interested, just go over to the Twitter and just look at the responses. I know there's been a lot of things have been retweeted. Clubs like Prestatyn, even clubs over in the English league system. And Altrincham put out a tweet earlier before. There was a slight dig in there, but it was light-hearted.
I saw Southport as well.
Southport and so many clubs. Warrington, and Warrington, another club who look like they're facing a challenging time. They put out, I think they created a Just Giving page asking for donations. Another club that got in touch and shared some of their memories of coming over and playing against Rhyl. The response has been incredible. It really has, from clubs all over Wales and many clubs across the border in England as well.
Well, hopefully, well, like you said, there's got to be football in Rhyl, and hopefully it does return as soon as possible. Hopefully football in general returns as soon as possible. But Cameron, thank you very much for coming on today. Really do appreciate your input. All the links will be in the description below. If you can spare anything, please donate. I'm sure it won't be the last story that we see of clubs facing turmoil as well. So protect your own local club. But thank you, Cameron, again. Thank you, everyone who's watched this. I hope it gives you a bit of insight into what has actually been going on at Rhyl, Welsh football, and just the situation that we find ourselves in. So thank you, everyone, for watching. Subscribe to the channel, like the video, check out our website, 247football.com. Stay inside, follow the guidance, and stay safe as well. And we will catch you next time.